In this dream, I was far younger, in my early teens, I would say. I found myself to be amongst a large group of individuals of a similar age, and the impression was then that we were in a school or a place of teaching, but more the feel of a school vacation where the classroom of students had been taken to somewhere different for the day, for whatever reason this might be. Even though the other students were of an appearance unfamiliar to me, I recognized them nonetheless, as they were the very students I had been with at school in this lifetime, and just as bothersome, obnoxious were they, much like they were 25 or so years ago, with me being one of the outcasts, as indeed I was. Oddly though, one of the students was encouraging me, despite my social standing with them, to assassinate one of the teachers. He revealed the means by which this would be accomplished. He unveiled an inspiring gun that fired carrot sticks. It was bordering on the pathetic. Maybe the target would die of mirth, and even in the dream I asked him if I was in fact going to assassinate Bugs Bunny. He demonstrated that the gun was more fearsome than its appearance suggested. On pulling the trigger, the harmless stick of vegetable became a mighty spear of carrot with a razor-tipped end, and thudded home into the wall, inserting itself several feet. Seems I had underestimated the gun, and maybe would never look at a carrot the same way again. But then the very teacher I was supposed to kill entered, and we swiftly concealed the gun, dismantling it and stashing away the parts. However, the carrot spear remained, protruding from the wall, and the teacher would naturally inquire as to what it was, and what it was doing there. Seems I was in a real side witty mood, as I proclaimed that a giant carrot man had got a little overexcited, and tried to relieve his lust by utilising the very wall, and had sent his large carrot phallus smashing through it from the other side of it. The scene... The scene switched to an open area. All the school students and I were departing from the building, and filing out with some direction and destination in mind. Things would take another twist. No vegetables were involved, however, this time. We were all set upon by every variety of animal you could possibly imagine. Rodents, cats, dogs, things with antlers, large teeth, fur and scales. From every conceivable direction they came. I was bitten, chewed, antlered, and clawed. I made it to a fence, and was confronted by the biggest wolf surely ever recorded. Things were certainly going from bad to worse. As I clambered over the fence, I took the moment to note the peculiar nature of the wolf, as it snapped at my ankles. It looked like a very crude drawing, resembling a wolf, yes, but only just, almost as though drawn by the hand of a very young child. Then I awoke. Although the assassination by deadly carrot never then happened, I can't say for certain if I would have gone through with it or not. Interestingly, how the experience was from a perspective view then of a younger me, and locked into a system, a school system, where social status can certainly dictate the ease or lack of it by which you navigate through the indoctrination experience that is school. Perhaps then I am far more likely to do things ordinarily out of character or outside my moral compass, particularly as a younger person trying to fit in, if it will afford me status. Perhaps then it was a kind of setup by the dark forces, maybe putting me in a place, situation, age, and state of being that would be more conducive for me to do such a deed, and thus reap potential cause and effect repercussions for it. As it was literally like I had been transported back into my created consciousness of 25 years ago, with the attitudes to match. I know the dark forces can set up situations to grab our attentions and thus our agreements. Maybe they are getting a little more elaborate in their deceptive snares. Maybe then, because of how it transpired, that the teacher wasn't slayed by my hand, the dark forces were most displeased at this opportunity lost, and so a more direct assault was instigated, and that's why it was suddenly like Call of the Wild out there. Why the last wolf looked so strange, I'm uncertain. However, when I had a dream I recounted before, one in which the dark forces tried to replicate a version of Gwen, my awareness allowed me to see through the deception, and I saw her as distorted and unfinished. Perhaps then, my real self, on close scrutiny of one of the animals, revealed them to be creations of the dark brats, using the forms of animals, but not the real articles. That had I considered this literally, I just would have thought I was under attack from random wildlife, and not perceive the real culprits. That's the end of that one.
Again, that was fun, Kevin. Yes, you're going through a lot here. Yes, you could be another Steven Spielberg and George Lucas with what you're doing here in the productions. And I like that statement you made there when you're going through something, and that is that things were out of character. Okay, all right, and I kind of caught on to that, and also the drawings, like holograms or whatever. This is where, like a child, like you were looking at the dog or whatever it is, the creature that was after you. Yeah, they're not too good at their creations, even though they're good at technology and whatever. But technology is a distortion with the all natural environment. Very, very real. Even though we have nice houses, we have cars, we have all this technology that's scientific and can do all these things, and it just seems amazing, but it's actually a distortion. And so compared to what the real guides provide as demonstrations that come out, very, through perfection, etc., because of the awareness. Yes, the holograms and the characters and whatever that the influence in the dark side and the cabal or whatever create, the reptilians, yeah, they're not as good at it as they think they are. So they try to do their best. And just like what we see in this society and on the earth here, things look a particular way to the personal self, don't they? The buildings, the cars, the roads, the cities, and it's like, wow, we marvel at these things. But really, compared to the true reality life is, and the endlessness of the real universes, this is all a distortion. And once you stand in a real position with your real awareness, you won't even want to have anything to do with this stuff, because it's all distortion, even though it looks good to the personal self. So yeah, thank you again. Great adventure, Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne. And another dream. This dream was interesting in that it is a recurring dream that I used to have when I was younger, pre-teenage, and I had forgotten about it until I had it again the other night. I was with a group of people, and we had an objective. There was some kind of arena segmented into a number of sections that spiraled upwards. Each segment had its own particular challenges to overcome, and then a kind of guardian to defeat. A little like levels in a computer game, where at the end of each, what they term an end-of-level boss must be bested to move on. The entire arena was constructed, as I said, like a spiral, and each segment had its own specific colour. The specifics of the challenges were always a little vague and hazy, faint impressions that were hard to bring back and with any detail. The guardians at the end of each part were a selection of monstrous creatures. Again, I only had impressions, but certainly very big, very ugly, some serpentine, some octopus-like. This dream was exactly the same as experienced before in my youth, and quite frequent, but no further detail was ever yielded. I would work through the segments with my group, but never sure I had ever reached the top. Sometimes my impressions of the creatures and specifics of the challenges were more vivid than others, but nothing very quantifiable. But this dream recently had an extra element. It ran along the same lines as all the times I had once experienced it, except this time, instead of the dream ending, my group and I were then sat on what seemed to be a floating floor. It was fragmented too, and we were scattered about, but seemingly content, even though our floor sections were suspended in the air over a seemingly bottomless abyss. There were other individuals there too, floating in the spaces between our floor segments. I'm unsure if they were guides, but certainly had an air of real awareness about them, and were in fact conveying information to us. They seemed rather pleased with what we had accomplished, and various bits of armour began to manifest before our eyes, floating between the floor segments. Seemed we were expected to receive these, and we would retrieve them as they floated on by, all various colours. I was trying to get a complete matching set. The scene then changed. I'm uncertain as to what happened in regards to the others in my group, but I now assumed the position of one of the guardians of the arena segments from earlier. I was not the final segment's guardian, but the one just prior to it, and the colour was purple, I think, which is in fact my favourite colour. I also assumed the form of the guardian, which was squid-like, very tall, not requiring water as a medium for its motion. Then I awoke. So it seems it had moved along since the dreams of yesteryear. With the references I have now, I'd have said the segments were the life levels, and my group and I were going through our process, bypassing the life levels, the battle being with our personal selves and facing all of creation, the final monster guardians, representing the last attachment or agreement to sever, or the conquering of that which restricted and prevented us accessing the level beyond. It seemed that in the second scene, when we were receiving armor, it suggested the battle is not yet won, so evidently there was more to experience. Or perhaps we hadn't bypassed creation, but we had better awareness through our experiences, and this was demonstrated by access to fancy armor, better equipped then to proceed and try again. And then, did the dream possibly suggest I may be tempted to settle at a life level that was, yes, higher up in creation in literal terms, perhaps the etheric, but not the real universes, as I assumed the form and became the guardian of the level just below the final one, the guardian monsters as a demonstration of the restrictions, so embodying the very restrictions that one would seek to move past in order to metaphorically slay the beast of self-decided limitation and become with the is. In addition, it's conceivable then that at a young age I was having these experiences, but the difference is I didn't recognize them for what they were. But now, with the knowledge and new references, and with my awareness expanded more than when I was younger, I can recognize a little better where I am in my dreams, what's going on, and what's being demonstrated to a better degree. So providing the same dream demonstration as I had all those years ago allows a comparison of my awareness in regards to the recognition of what was taking place in the dream then to what I recognize as what is occurring in it now, with additional content that I either was unable to perceive or bring through to the physical personal self back then, or perhaps, due to my lack of awareness, it was deemed a little pointless to share too much with me, as I wouldn't have recognized what it was conveying anyway. That's the end of that one.
That was excellent, young man. Yes. And so, yeah, you see it well. The comparison idea, in other words, as we've come through many of these things, you'll notice that, you know, the religions, the spiritual paths, basically whatever, people become self-convinced. And they do have experiences, but they don't really have a real comparison with the true reality life is, and this is very important. And the comparison really equals more viewpoints on the reality that we're experiencing, because the experiences continue. Doesn't matter. So you go through this process now, but in a way you continually go through it, because the possibility to become more aware is always present. It always is. And so it's good that you bring that up. You see that very well, and you share this with others to understand this, because again, most people get locked into what's the basic idea on earth with mainly religion, spiritual paths, belief. It's like, well, I believe this and this is what it is. And again, basically it's a one-dimensional view, instead of taking the tour and seeing that there are endless views available, and not just trying to hold on to being self-convinced about something that sounds good because of old words of wisdom, or, you know, whatever, pretty sayings, etc., parables. But that was very good, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne. And I'll recount one more dream. It's a short one, so in my final dream, I was with yet another group, my ever adventurous group that I invariably find myself with on the real side. We all had an objective, that being to reach a certain destination. The route would not be easy. Standing in oppositional defiance of our mission and success were hordes of other individuals and creatures, brandishing weapons and fierce expressions. Every member of my group were very human, except for me. I was a reptilian, though I seemed not at odds with my human associates. We donned our armor, battle ensued, we fought valiantly, battling through the swathes of individuals who hindered our progress. Alas, I would fall to the onslaught, but every other human member of my group were able to press on, proceeding ever further, and ultimately succeeding in reaching the goal that was denied me. That was the end of this short dream. Often we have dreams where we assume the role of other species, as this allows for better objectivity to perceive from the position of other species. This allows comparisons and the experience of wearing the vehicles, attitudes, and personal literal overcoats of various species, that we better see how everything, from the species we are, to the personality, mind, emotion, and created consciousness, is just something created and overlaying what is real, helping us better to perceive what the true reality is, by experiencing everything it is not, from various species viewpoints. In this case, the dream, I feel, was confirmation of the limited qualities of a reptilian, the more restricting created consciousness that would make it far harder for a reptilian to recognize their real intent and connect with their awareness than, say, a human generally. In the dream, the goal we sought was the is, I would suggest, and as a reptilian, I failed, where all my human companions succeeded. The battle was probably more so along the lines of the personal self yet again, and so, with the reptilians having far more compacted consciousnesses of a more restricting nature, their battle with the personal self, should they choose to take that on, would be a far longer uphill journey than a human, I would say. But should a reptilian begin the journey to getting through creation and the personal self, they may find themselves gradually better positioning themselves, and perhaps becoming human in a future lifetime, as a reptilian does seem to be a notch below a human on the awareness connection and overcoming the personal self evolutionary ladder. That ends that one.
Again, very good, very, very good, Kevin, with all that explanation and your experience, and you seeing that. And yes, it is so. It's a particular view, and you're seeing that. I do that myself. I've trained myself to objectively see from another person's point of view instead of just following my own idea. I'll have my own ideas, but at the same time, before I do certain things, if it's a business or what have you in this world, I set myself up to also see the other person's point of view so that I'm ready to deal with it also, because we're all really dealing with ourselves and free will itself. And so, yeah, the reptilians, they have the technology. That's what we're dealing with. This is the grid we're in. This is the HARP, the Wi-Fi, the 5G coming up, etc. All this technology, they have the technology, so they have gotten people to think in terms that, oh, you're a smart person because you know technology, but really, it's not about being smart. It's about being aware. And if you look back into the cowboy and Indian days, which were a few hundred years ago, I'll just use America as an example. The Indians didn't have the technology. They didn't need it. They didn't have standing armies. They didn't use money. They didn't have congresses. They didn't make laws, constitutions, and all this silly stuff. No, it is the bankers, the reptilians, the cabal, etc., that have done this over the ages and made it into what it is now. Again, there's a big adventure coming that's going to be a lot more fun than a lot of this stuff. So yeah, what you're seeing is you're seeing the reptilian view, and it is limited, and they are struggling. They're thinking it's through their control and what have you that they can get what they want out of life, and they can't. It is this real recognition, and this is why they experiment on the humans too. They're looking to take something from the humans through their technology. This is why they created all these projects, the Montauk projects, their secret experiments, even witchcraft and whatever. They're trying everything they can, but because through the eons that they've been warriors, just like in the series and the movies, Star Trek with Captain Kirk and the Klingons, etc. Same idea, the Borg and all these other things. You're seeing a reflection of that, and vampires and what have you. It's all from this created distortion of these things, and this is not how life works or how it is. But we have been the subjects of agreeing. It's kind of like we're nice and they're not, but at the same time we're not interested in battling, so we become more passive and have agreed. So we're in this situation now, but it's actually part of a bigger wake up that is the new nowness that I brought forward here for everybody. The new wave is, and this is how real it gets. It even gets more real, and that is that it becomes so real that it is hard for a lot of people to see this. But no, that is excellent. You're gaining this. You're gaining this insight to recognize this, and the comparison is much, much needed. And that is, yes, you have to first go through creation to recognize what is not real, because this helps you recognize what is real. And it just depends upon when the individual has the courage. This is where you have to be the risk taker. Step up, and then the guides, you're allowing them to show you what life is, and little by little. So we are the fast track, okay? And the reptilians too. I'm dealing with the reptilians on the real side, and a lot of them are coming to our side, you might say, simply because they are tired of the destruction. Since we put away the Queen of Orion, etc., they see this, and they don't want to be going to the Phantom Zone either and start all over again through creation like the Queen is, because she's really a stinker. She's almost 100% arrogance. She loves her arrogance more than she does want to becoming more aware. And the reality of life is everybody can have whatever they want, and even better than you can imagine. But until you go through the process and recognize this with the whole of life, not just this place in life called creation, well, then you're going to struggle with it. And so, like the old saying, resistance is futile. And it really is, because you can do all these funny things, just like the politicians do of the world, just like the governments of the world. They do all this tricky stuff to those that support them. Well, it's all deception shows up. It's not going to work. It never does. So yes, the reptilians, like the experience you're having, yeah, they have the technology, but guess what? Technology is a distortion. We don't need technology. We have something so much better, and just take the time. And even if it takes you 1,000 years to recognize your real awareness, it is worth it. It's not going to be an overnight thing. People are thinking instant gratification and the guides will do it for you, etc. Nobody can do it. All I can do is present it, bring it out to a particular point, and then at that point, at that position or whatever it is, whenever it is, you have to start recognizing it for yourself and learn a real purpose with the isness life is, and that is real survival, because that's what life is all about, and to recognize that. And so, yes, Kevin, thank you so much for bringing this forward. It's excellent, excellent demonstration and presentation for a lot of people to learn and wake up to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dwayne, and that concludes our Skype for today.